Good morning, y'all. It is a frigid Monday morning, the frozen tundra of Metro Atlanta. One moment as we bring in our Falcons Facebook group. And let's see, let's bring in X. We'll bring in X this morning too. Get going today. Hope everybody had a good weekend. And we are good to go. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast Monday morning edition. It is January 12th, and why does it feel like we've been looking for a new coach for like the last 6 months? New coach, new general manager, new president of football. It's been a season of change for the Atlanta Falcons, and frankly, change was needed when you've got a team that's in 8 straight losing seasons in a decade of, what was it? Was it Motley Crue album, The Decade of Decadence? Now this is the decade of futility. Unfortunately, some of us have lived through a couple of those, including the 1980s, where it was a decade of futility as well. So lots of change. Matt Ryan has officially been named and introduced as the Atlanta Falcons president of football. Isn't that the best title? First guy who's actually on the Falcons staff now. The first time I ever saw that, Dave Huxtable was working at Georgia Tech, and his title was director of football. I'm like, that's a title I need right there, director of football. So he will be the next step in this evolution will be to hire a general manager. And it looks like Ian Cunningham from the Chicago Bears, from the Philadelphia Eagles, from the Baltimore Ravens is a heavy favorite for that position. And then they'll work on the head coach. And frankly, all of this could be done this week. Now, the timeline on this could change a little bit because in college football, they will announce the head coach as quickly as they can for recruiting reasons. But for the NFL, correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the chat, but I just don't remember. It's widely expected that he will take this job, but I don't remember them actually doing anything official until that team's season is over. So right now, the favorite, according to betting odds, across various sites, the favorite for the Atlanta Falcons is Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, someone that we have talked about a lot on this show as far as ticking all the right boxes when I'm looking for a next head coach of uber successful and doing it without a Superman, without an all-pro type of quarterback. And no offense to Sam Darnold, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. When Nathaniel Hackett ends up getting a job out of Green Bay. He's not Tom Brady when Charlie Weiss and what the hell's his name? Josh McDaniels get jobs out of New England. Sam Darnold is a flawed, talented quarterback who is having another really good season in a row. He had one with the Vikings last year. He's having another good season, and they were at one point the number one offense in the NFL. So very interested there, and it looks like that could happen. So the reason we go live is because I like having the conversation with y'all. So I want to check in and say hello to some folks. I'm going to say hello to some folks that have that were come in nice and early before we even got started, and I see Curtis lined up with a couple of super chats, so then I'll jump to him as well. Keith was in first. Keith's got the outside Falcoholica. He says, here we go, guys. Rise up. Let's do this. There's no reason we shouldn't be winning the South every year. I think the South is on the way back up. The South is rising. It's all in cycles. And when I was watching the Denver Broncos do their coaching search, and they're talking about Sean Payton. Well, it's the levels of spoiled of some other teams' franchises are blessed to have just doesn't quite resonate with a lifelong Atlanta sports fan. Well, Sean Payton only won one Super Bowl with, a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's not any good. Only won one Super Bowl. Did you see who the Saints were before Drew Brees? And did you see the NFC South in that era? All 4 teams went to the Super Bowl in that span. All 4 of them did. It was the best division in football for a while. It's what the NFC West is right now. So they're on their way up. The Saints are improving. They dug themselves. They got a gift from Carr. Their quarterback looks okay, and they're out of cap hell. They're never with Loomis there. They're never going to be great against the cap, but they're getting better. Some of their old guys, and then the Panthers are looking pretty good. The Buccaneers are going to need a refresh. But the Panthers are improving as well. So the South is on the way up, and the Falcons should be part of that for sure. Cash Bag Beats, good morning, Scott. How sure are you of Matt Ryan's skills in his first front office role? He will need learning on the job, so there are a couple of seasons of learning ahead of him. But he's going to be involved in it's director of football. It's everything football. So he'll hire the guy. Do I think that he can work with the consulting company to hire a good general manager? If Ian Cunningham's a guy, that looks pretty good to me. Clint Kubiak's a guy, looks pretty good to me. Now, his job is to empower the other guys to do their jobs, not to meddle, not to be involved in, day-to-day operations of let's get this free agent, that type of stuff. He's looking to hire those guys. Do I feel like he could do that and make sure that that's happening correctly? Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. I mean, this is going to sound really arrogant, and that's okay. I don't care. I do care, but I just want to put this into perspective. One, this isn't rocket science. This isn't the hardest thing in the world. I get kind of irritated when people make football sound like we're diagnosing nuclear codes here. And this is a relatively simple game. I've never worked in the front office of the Atlanta Falcons. Do I feel like if I were to start, give me the 6 months that Matt Ryan has had to think about this, and I might be able to come in and help improve this team in his role? I do. I feel confident in that. I feel confident in Matt Ryan, who's been around in this league and is an extremely intelligent guy who's been around this organization for 17 years, plus. When was he drafted? 2008. So going on to he's been around the NFL. I feel confident that Matt Ryan, at the very least, has the best interest of the Atlanta Falcons in heart instead of covering your, CYA, cover your ass. I don't have that feeling about Rich McKay. Never had that feeling. We know Matt Ryan has the best interest of this team. But so does Arthur Blank. But I think, Matt Ryan is a genuine football guy. And I think he will be able to use his connections and make an improvement in the areas he's deemed to improve, which is football. And frankly, in some areas, the bar was set so low that it will get better. I have no doubt it will get better. Curtis, welcome in, brother. It came in early. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Nick will be back on Wednesday in Falcons Nation. That's all you. He says, it's sad to say I'm not on this John Harbaugh train. I don't think we need another CEO coach. We need an offensive coordinator coach so our offense and the coach can grow together. And that's, again, it's one of the reasons Matt Ryan's experience. So how do you think Matt Ryan feels about this? Matt Ryan's experience is one of the reasons I want an offensive coach. Okay, the Falcons did really well. Offensive coordinator leaves for another job. Excuse me. Great. Got to kind of start over. Struggle. Success year 2. Let's do it again. That cycle kept going on through Mike Smith and Dan Quinn until finally, all dynasties, and the Falcons weren't a dynasty, so to speak, but that was really the golden age of Atlanta Falcons football if you compare it to the rest of their history. It was, the Matt Ryan era, when Matt Ryan was a starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, including the last 4 years that were under 500, they had a top 10 winning percentage if you compare it to the history of the league. When Matt Ryan is not the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons have the worst winning percentage in the NFL. That's who the Falcons are. So when I say golden age, yeah, it was. It was the golden age, relatively speaking. They were relevant and they were winning. Now, when we talked about John Harbaugh becoming available, we said if it is John Harbaugh, basically you got 2 positions done, because he's going to be the Sean Payton of the Atlanta Falcons. He's going to have player personnel control. He will be the boss of the general manager. And do you want all those things or not? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. They weren't willing to do that with Bill Belichick. And, to the detriment of the guys who made that decision, are all gone now. Now, I'm not saying Belichick would have been the right answer. I'd feel a lot better about John Harbaugh coming in with Todd Monken as his offensive coordinator and bringing relevancy and competency to this franchise immediately. Bill Belichick, I'm not so sure about. He's kind of turned into a circus act recently. And I've seen nothing in the last 2 years that made me think, oh man, I really wish we had hired Bill Belichick. So I don't have any regrets for passing on him. The process, on the other hand, bothered me. And y'all have heard me say that before. When they start talking about, it would have made some things uncomfortable for some other people. Tough. You know what's uncomfortable? Being fired and losing again and having to face millions of Atlanta Falcons fans. The process. And I think that's what bothered Arthur Blank too, was the process, because that's one of the reasons why he made the sweeping changes. I could see the Raiders doing something like that with Harbaugh. A team that's a little more, I don't think the Falcons are desperate. I think their roster is in pretty good shape. I think they've got good ownership. Matt Ryan has come in to, is here to stabilize things. I don't know that they would give John Harbaugh the total control that he would want, but Harbaugh might end up saying, the Raiders, I think, have had 5 coaches in 5 years. It's a disaster of an organization. I don't care if Tom Brady's name is associated with it or not. And they're a ways away. Where Harbaugh might say, okay, this is what I want for, the money's one thing. It's kind of irrelevant. Oh, he wants $20 million. So what? The Falcons, if Arthur Blank were to sell the Falcons right now, he'd probably get $7 or $8 billion for them. And, when you're willing to take on a $30 million dead cap hit to pay somebody that you're not even on your team anymore, $20 million for a coach, so what? So I want this money for my salary, and I want this money for my pool of assistants. These are guys I want to bring. Fine. I want to have final say on personnel matters. No. Okay, we can work with that. And he may think the Falcons are a better opportunity. We'll see. That said, as I just spun my way in a big circle, Adam Schefter came out yesterday and said the former president of the Green Bay Packers is still considered royalty up there in Green Bay. His son is the agent for John Harbaugh up in Green Bay. So if they do pull the trigger on Matt LaFleur, Harbaugh, I would say he's probably going to Green Bay anyway. And right now, the heavy favorite for me is Clint Kubiak, which checks all the boxes except proven. That's the one we don't know, and I'll admit in a big way, we overlooked that someone who, and I know this, I came up with the phrase when I was first getting into scouting, just because a person has a job doesn't mean they're the most qualified for it. Because I used to get hell from everybody. You're not a coach. What do you know? I know this guy's an idiot that you're saying as a coach. And I know that. So sometimes we overlooked the minimum competency and just assumed that they were at least minimally competent. Jimmy Lake was not. Zach Robinson had his up and downs, but didn't do so well. Raheem Morris did not take a big leap from his previous staff. It didn't seem like he learned along the way from game management, roster management, time management, all those things where he was still a negative for me. And that's why he was fired. We don't know those things about Clint Kubiak. We know them about John Harbaugh on that one. But coming back, because Curtis went back-to-back on this, he says, getting anything other than an offensive coordinator type for head coach, it'll constantly be a coaching carousel. In a sense, it is anyway. But who's the offensive coordinator for Sean Payton? It's Joe Lombardi. I think that's right. So what? And people talk about, Joe Lombardi, I think, has gotten some sniffs for some interviews, for some token interviews, but I'm not sure. Davis Webb actually is. He's super young, quarterbacks coach, passing game coordinator on his way up. He's gotten some interviews, but it's the same thing that was happening with Eric Bieniemy at Kansas City. It is Andy Reid's team. It is Andy Reid's offense, and he's got one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And this guy doesn't even coach quarterbacks. That's Joe Lombardi. We don't hear anybody saying, oh, Joe Lombardi needs a shot. Joe Lombardi needs a shot. Joe Lombardi deserves this shot. He's in the same boat as Eric Bieniemy. Joe Lombardi's probably not going to get a shot either. He's going to have to leave and become a play caller, offensive coordinator again in order to get that next step. But that will always, you're right, and I agree, and that's one of my points, that I want an offensive guy too, is because I want the system in place and I want it to stay in place. So you're not changing systems all the time, or worse, bringing a guy, well, this is what they're comfortable with. We're going to hire somebody who runs this system to come and run this other system because that's what they're used to. No, come on. But thank you, Curtis. Appreciate you being a member. That's what the little token is next to your name. It shows up as a Falcon in the chat. It means he's a member. Be like Curtis. Become a member. We picked up a bunch last week, so thank you very much to the new members. We'll have some members-only content this week as well. Our friend Rio, friend of the show, coming in also. He says, rise up, Falcon Nation. It is officially the Matt Ryan era. Just a reminder, we need to monitor the Green Bay situation. Don't say I didn't tell you. Oh, dude, I've been quoting you. I'm like, I never thought it would happen, but there's and I probably credited the royal you. I said, but there's the folks on my podcast that are adamant, is the word I used, adamant that it's going to happen. And y'all, I went to bed at 21:06. I turned it off at 21:06. I turn on my phone, bing, bing, get a couple text messages. And my friend, first one I read, because he probably emailed me or texted me at 12:30 in the morning. It says, Matt LaFleur to Atlanta. I said, tell me they blew that game. Tell me they blew that game. Oh, my goodness. And if I'm looking at it, it felt like a Matt Ryan game, didn't it? You know, I'm looking at the box score. I'm like, what happened? I'm like, Jordan Love, 280 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. You lost that game? And people want to interview their offensive coordinator? I mean, their defensive coordinator? Man, that's where I'd start having the problem. Now, that's not to say that LaFleur didn't have some boneheaded moves of his own. And I saw someone say, you know, somebody in the media say, oh, one of the problems with the Shanahan tree is they become so focused on play calling that they seem to forget, you know, game management situations. I'm like, that is such a brutally easy take to make, that, you know, it's not just the Shanahan tree of guys that have these problems, but it's like, listen, again, I mentioned were the Broncos the last team to sell in the NFL with $7 billion? You can't put a shock collar. You can't find somebody like, oh, we've gotten 3 penalties because the coach keeps running out on the field. Well, damn it, get back coach. Put a leash on him. We're going to pay this guy $100,000, and all his job is to pull him back. Get back. That happened. You can't find somebody out there. The owner has a nuclear red button as he's listening to say, no, you're not running a pass play right now when you need to run the effing ball, to quote Matt Ryan. Oh, man. But the Green Bay situation, as you said, LaFleur could be available. And if he is, I think Harbaugh goes there. Matt LaFleur, I don't know. There's some folks in here. I don't remember this. There's some folks in here that have said that Matt Ryan and Matt LaFleur didn't necessarily get along. Let's let bygones be bygones. Easy for me to say. Let's let bygones be bygones. Because Matt LaFleur should have been a very highly paid offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons in 2017. And Mike McDaniel should have taken Mike LaFleur's job. And Mike LaFleur should have taken Matt LaFleur's job. And Kyle Shanahan should have had to start from scratch. Instead, he took the entire staff of the number 1 offense in the NFL to San Francisco with him. And the Falcons hired a disgraced alcoholic who'd never been a coach in the NFL before. And they suffered the worst loss of production from a number 1 offense from one year to the next in the history of the NFL. And it cost Dan Quinn his job eventually. But you did say it. And hey, I'm not doubting you. It's just, man, 1 year left on his contract, Matt LaFleur. Do they want to renew, or do they want to cut him loose? If they cut him loose, they've got Harbaugh. I think that's the only way you make that move, Rio. If they cut him loose, they've got Harbaugh. And really, this puts us back to a week ago. When they fired Raheem Morris, there's only really now, let's say Harbaugh goes to Green Bay. Well, that's okay. We didn't expect Green Bay to you might have expect Green Bay to be open anyway, and we didn't expect John Harbaugh to be available. All right, well, now LaFleur might be the number one target in the NFL, or Stefanski. Those might be the top two targets in the NFL. Now, with Green Bay now closed by Harbaugh, the number one opening is the Ravens, and that could end up going to LaFleur. Well, we didn't expect those two, so this kind of cancel each other out. We didn't expect those guys and those places to be open anyway when we had our gut reaction and Raheem Morris was fired. So we're kind of back to square one. The only new name is Mike McDaniel, who is interviewing with the Atlanta Falcons this week. I wouldn't mind if like Robert Saleh came in as it's actually Robert. Someone asked this: how do you pronounce his name? Pro Football Reference says Saleh. Robert Saleh comes in and says, defensive head coach, and how good is that? How does San Francisco win that game yesterday? I mean, they had no business winning that game yesterday. I mean, winning 12 games and the way he kept that defense playing all season long. We saw it against the Falcons. They brought a guy up from the practice squad at inside linebacker, taking his first snaps of the game, and that defense just squashed Atlanta. And then he worked with Mike McDaniel for 4 years out in San Francisco. And I don't know that I would want to hire Mike McDaniel right away. He's a little, quirky for that. One of those shower shoes things, if you go back to Bull Durham, when his quirkiness is cute and colorful when you're winning. When you're not, it's just weird. And right now he's just a little too weird, I think, to get a job right away. I think he'll have to get back into the cycle for a year or two and then take an opening in 2027, 2028 maybe. But if he were to come in as offensive coordinator to the Atlanta Falcons for 2 years under Robert Saleh, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. I could get on board with that. But let's get back to saying hello to some folks that have come in. Austin, good to see you. It says, good morning, Falcons Podcast. Let's hope we get the right hire this time and consistency moving forward. Unfortunately, we've had consistency in the past. 8 straight losing seasons is pretty damn consistent. I know what you mean, though. Evan J. said, I know it's too early for head coach talk. No, it's not. Or we've been talking head coach talk since they lost to the Panthers. After that 30-0 game to the Panthers, we started talking head coach, and we really started talking head coach when it was 34-3 against the Miami Dolphins. It's not too early. I do feel like Ian Cunningham's the guy at general manager. Did I ever complete this thought about if it's Kubiak, they might have to wait until the season is over to announce him? I don't know if I ever actually even completed that thought. But if we can get LaFleur, the city will be ecstatic. I don't know. I think it'll be split on him just because, his lack of overall success relative to what you expect in Green Bay. I mean, Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl up there, didn't he? He's available. So you look at that. I feel like when I look at Matt LaFleur, I feel like I'm looking a little bit at Kyle Shanahan. And did he blow this game? And it's the same thing. People want to bag on Matt Ryan for 28-3. I'm like, are you out of your mind? It's like hitting on Jordan. The same thing. I look at Jordan Love. 280-something yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And Jordan Love threw that game. That's the same thing as saying like Matt Ryan did. No, that's insanity. Well, if it's Matt LaFleur's offense, now his game management didn't help, but man, I blame that on the defense. I blame 28-3 on the defense, y'all. And when you're up like that, the defense has to come up big. And do they win that game if they have Micah Parsons? Probably. They're one play away. They're one play out of about 20 away that could have won that game, just like Atlanta was in 2016. One of any number of 25 to 30 plays goes a different direction, and it's a different outcome. But I certainly wouldn't want to hire the Green Bay defensive coordinator as a head coach right now. John Harrell's in. He says, let's get – there's talk about Matt Ryan. No, Matt Ryan's too nice for this job. Well, Matt Ryan would be almost a recruiter as much as anything, and then he would, have to fire somebody. Everybody gets fired. But Matt Ryan is an intense competitor. We know this. He's not afraid to get in anybody's face, whether it's future Hall of Fame receiver of Julio Jones or Tony Gonzalez. Matt Ryan is good leadership. He knows when to love somebody up and he knows when to get after them. He was great at it. So yes. Let's see here. Rusty coming in. Thanks for being a member, Rusty. I know you signed up again recently. He says, ever since it ended poorly with the Matt situation 4 years ago, I believe Arthur always thought about bringing him back in some capacity to mend fences. Perfect timing. Hit the reset button, baby. Yeah, I agree with you. I think this makes a lot of sense. And of all the things that, whoever you're in favor of, oh, that was an Arthur Smith pick. Or, oh, I think it was Arthur Blank who wanted Kirk Cousins, not Terry Fontenot. There were a lot of excuses when things went right, when things went bad. I wholeheartedly, 100% believe Deshaun Watson was Arthur Blank driven, wholeheartedly. And that alienated Matt Ryan, who was, to be fair, was in massive decline. But when they messed that whole thing up and Matt Ryan got traded for a 3rd round pick, it alienated Matt Ryan. It did. And I think this is, they put him in the ring of honor. There's some guys that won't come back. Isn't Julio in that boat right now? Julio is not quite happy. Matt can help with that. That's for sure. That I agree with you. I think, this is not just a make good. Matt Ryan is a talented human being on that one. So yeah, I'm quite happy to see that myself. Robert G 7890 coming in. He is a new member. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you signing up and becoming a member. We haven't lost many people, so it's a slow grow, but it keeps growing as far as membership goes. So ask somebody in the chat that is a member. They've got that bird next to their name. What do you think? Is it worth it? Because they can cancel at any time, and it's been going. So appreciate it. And it helps during the off season and everything when we're working here. And right now January has been good to us. No 1st round draft pick, but a total reboot of the franchise has been good for business. So we certainly appreciate it. Mr. Jalapeno 1992. What are your thoughts at quarterback? I don't see Penix being the future. He is just unreliable with his injuries. StreamYard has a new feature where it will clip segments. This is probably a good one for StreamYard to clip it. What are your thoughts at quarterback? I don't see Penix being the future. He's just unreliable with his injuries. I think most, unless they look completely incompetent, most 1st round, especially top 10 quarterbacks, will get 3 years to try and prove that they are the guy. Unless you're Zach Wilson out there or Trey Lance, it may not even be 3 years anymore. But he hasn't even had a full 2 years to do it. And part of that reason why, Mr. Jalapeno, is because of the injuries you discuss. Because the Falcons aren't going to be in a situation to go after a big-time free agent quarterback. And frankly, those don't exist very often anyway. The last time was Kirk Cousins, and he was 36 years old coming off of a major season-ending injury, and you still had to drop $50 million a year on him. So that doesn't happen very often anyway. And the Falcons don't have a number one it doesn't have to be number one overall, a number one pick. And this isn't a great quarterback class anyway, that the Falcons would not be in the market for drafting a quarterback at 13. No matter what, it'd be too risky because there's probably doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people that you would want at number 13. You're better off going into the 2nd round or trading back or whatnot. I don't think this is quite Kenny Pickett's class. Mendoza has some good things going about him, but is he a true number one overall? We'll see. And you weren't getting up to number one overall. Hell, like the top 3 teams all need quarterbacks. So you weren't going to be able to acquire a quarterback. So by default, Michael Penix is going to get one more year out of this. He probably would have gotten it anyway, but he will get one more year to prove that he can finish a season. I won't say 17 games, because what if he misses the first month of the season? That he can finish a season and play well. Does he clean up some of the accuracy issues? Does he take a step forward in how he faces pressure? Because he wasn't very good in that situation last year. So does he improve there? And he'll get 2026 to do it. And a new general manager, a new head coach will have the freedom to move on from him in 2027. So, they should treat this similarly to how they should have treated it his rookie year. Go get a bridge quarterback for $20 million or under that is a established veteran. If you can, won't be all that easy, y'all. There's not a ton of them out there, and someone else might be interested. And hell, that might end up being Kirk Cousins. Kirk, here's a one-year deal, $15 million guaranteed. We've already paid you $100. Here's another $15. It might be. They're going to have to tear up his contract by March 13th to do that. He'll take a $35 million dead cap hit, which happens no matter what. And Kirk Cousins has a $50 million dead cap overall cap hit in 2026, but he's making an extra $15 million a year this year. It might be him. He might be the best option for a veteran bridge. And if you're upfront honest with it, Kirk, we're going to sell you for 15. We still want Michael to be the starter if and when he's healthy to see what we've got there. He might be the best option. He might not want to do that. Probably won't want to do that. But Penix is going to get the shot in 2026 if he's physically capable of doing it. And if it doesn't work out, they're all in on quarterback in 2027. All right, that's probably a good place to put an ad on the on the audio version of this. Appreciate the question. Mike Harvey coming in again. It's going to be Stefanski or Kubiak. Don't think Matt Ryan is qualified. No scouting or front office experience. Cunningham for general manager. Don't think Ryan is qualified. His role is basically consigliere to Arthur Blank. He doesn't have to be this. He's not going to be the scout. He's not going to be the general manager. What is it that you expect him to do? I expect him to be a voice of reason, working with other very experienced people in order to make a decision that's best for the overall well-being of the Atlanta Falcons. I expect him to be involved in ticket pricing and why aren't there more people in the stadiums? Why are there so many no-shows? That came up, by the way. We can get into that later if you want to. I don't expect him to be at the Senior Bowl in order to look at a fifth-round defensive tackle and saying, you're taking this guy. He could do it, but I don't expect him to do that. So I think Ryan is absolutely qualified to be an overseer. Are things running the way they're supposed to run? I've used that kind of joke about myself in certain things. I'm like, I can't do this job. I can do a little bit of it. Let's say I can edit photos, but I'm not a photo editor. I can shoot video, but I'm not a videographer. I can write, but I'm not necessarily, a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. I can do all of those things. I'm not qualified to do any one of those as my primary job. So I either have to find something else to do or I have to run the whole damn thing. I'm qualified to oversee everything. That's how I see Matt Ryan. Is Matt Ryan qualified to be general manager? No, I don't. I agree with you. I don't believe he is. Is he qualified to be lead scout? No. Is he qualified to be quarterbacks coach? Maybe. That's about 3 tiers down. Is he qualified to be offensive coordinator? No. Head coach? No. Is he qualified enough to be a voice of reason to Arthur Blank and his most trusted confidant in order to oversee the health of the Atlanta Falcons? Yes, I think he is. And frankly, I trust his motives again. I feel like I trust his motives a lot more than I do Rich McKay. And that's a big thing also, is trust. I trust Matt Ryan is going to do what's best for this organization, to do what he thinks is best for the organization. Because let me rephrase that. Because anybody who've watched me for more than 2 shows know I hate the phrase "trust the coaches." No, no. Why would I trust the coaches? They get it wrong, and they're all going to get fired. Every coach gets fired. I do not trust the coaches every decision like they're infallible. I trust them to try and do what they think is best most of the time. I do not trust that they are going to do what is best because they'll make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And that's why we second guess, and that's why we have these conversations. I trust Matt Ryan that he's got the Atlanta Falcons' best interest at heart. Did you feel that way all the time about the previous regime? I didn't. So do I think he's qualified for the role that he has? Yes, I do. Do I think he's qualified to be a straight-to general manager? No, I don't. I don't. There's too much that goes into that with contracts and player negotiations and all of that type of stuff that no, I don't. And that's not what he's doing. Do I think that Ian Cunningham is qualified to take that jump to general manager of the Atlanta Falcons? Yes, I do. Well, if that happens, that means Matt Ryan did his job. Now, part 1. Part 2 would then be head coach. So, Mike, I get the feeling, but I feel good about this Matt Ryan hire and what he's supposed to do, and not just because he's not Rich McKay. What's your number 1 qualification? I'm not Rich McKay. You're hired. That's a lot how some of us feel. Let's see here. Rusty, I see part of this on Evero. Let me see here. He says, I'm actually super optimistic about this whole thing as long as we don't drop the ball and hire Vance Joseph or Ejiro Evero. Yeah, Evero's never been a head coach. Vance was a head coach, but it didn't go well in Denver, and he wasn't exactly put in the best spot either. And now he's done a 3-year internship under Sean Payton. I would rather have Vance Joseph than Ejiro Evero. But if I'm going defensive coordinator, former head coach, I'd probably look at Robert Saleh first. That's where I might want to go on that one. But I wouldn't be thrilled with Vance Joseph, but again, the defensive thing, he was not good. His first run around the ring with the Denver Broncos, those are 2 pretty big strikes. 2 pretty big strikes for me. Let's see. I want to here. I did actually want to hit on this. It's in my notes that Second and Short Falcons reports that you see Zach Robinson is being interviewed by Tampa. Yes, I did. He was, and this tells you a lot here. When you fire the coach, most of their coaches are still under contract. And if they are interviewing for a lateral position, you have the ability to block that as an organization. Zach Robinson, is still the Falcons offensive coordinator of record. He was interviewed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their vacant offensive coordinator position. That's now been vacant. They'll have at least their 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years, which is one of the reasons I don't want a defensive head coach. What does that mean? It means the Atlanta Falcons / Arthur Blank / Matt Ryan did not block Zach Robinson's interview with the Tampa Bay for a lateral move, OC to OC. That means if anybody has any worry about it whatsoever, it means Zach Robinson is gone. Now, Jeff Ulbrich was requested to interview by the Dallas Cowboys, and Arthur Blank blocked it. Nope, you cannot. I actually had this started out as an X post, and it didn't post for some reason. I'm a little surprised they did that, but in recruiting, I'm of the mindset, if you tell somebody no, you can't have it, they're going to want it more. And if I believe that this is the best place for you, for me, and we can make this work, yeah, go interview with them. Go talk with them. I want you here, and we'll make sure that happens, but I want you to. And maybe that's just me. You tell me no, and I'm going to go do it. My wife learned that at an early stage of our relationship. Well, just tell him he can't. And she laughed at one of her friends. Like, hell, I might as well go do it for him then. So that's how I feel about it. So I was a little surprised they blocked him, but they want Jeff Ulbrich back. Doesn't mean he will be back. It's going to be left up to the new head coach and general manager. Oh, let's see here on Candler Price. Holy cow, I made it live. Well, good for you. Looks like you got something else going on there based on your profile picture. Smooth C. What's up, Scott? Take a sip. Will do. I got my Lion coffee. This is one of the 100% Kona ones. Oh man. I had to do the math on it to try and because it's $90 a bag, which sounds outrageous, but I opened this. I'd been saving it. Patrick sent it to me for a while. I opened it on my birthday, which was January 3rd. I'm like, well, now I know exactly how long this bag's going to last. And it's going to last me about 3 weeks. I'm like, all right, 21 days. It's about $4 a cup. That's actually not that bad, except that I can get something I like almost as much for about 80 cents a cup. Then it sounds really bad. So, yep, taking a sip. Terry Clark, hope you are doing well. We talked about Matt LaFleur and John Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh ends up in Green Bay if LaFleur is let go, and I think that's the only way they let LaFleur go is if they know they've got Harbaugh in the bag. Mike came back with another super thank you, and he's a member, so he's double dipping triple. You got the hat trick actually today, Mike. He says 2 mock drafts. I took Nussmeier in the 3rd round at 79th. Second draft, I got Carson Beck in the 4th round, 114th value pick. Yeah, the Falcons are going to need quarterbacks. I'm okay if Easton Stick comes back as practice squad / number 3, but they're going to need a 1/2 to come in. Depending on your feelings on Michael Penix, is he the one for sure? Nothing's for sure until he's out there playing. But they're going to need another quarterback for sure. If you were to get one of these guys a day 3, late day 2 guys, then I think that would be the Easton Stick role. So he would be battling out with, for the 3rd, and maybe you get lucky. It's one of the reasons I'm so against trading away draft picks is because the probability. I had somebody say, "Oh, draft guys always like picks because they always think they're going to hit on everything." That was the dumbest comment that I've ever heard. But no, it's exactly the opposite. We know they're going to fail. If I have 2 7ths and I have a 10% chance of hitting in a 7th round, if I have 2 7ths, well, I can't do the math on that. It's 0.9 times 0.9 minus 1. It's like, then I have a 15% chance of hitting. I increase my odds. And, well, what about Brock Purdy? What about all these guys? Yeah, you can't build a team based on the exception to the rule because you're not going to beat the odds every time. But if you take more shots at the dartboard, you're going to hit more often. Usually, typically, it's how it's supposed to work. So, yes, bring in some bodies at quarterback. And maybe you get lucky on these guys. Maybe they were underused. I mean, I saw Bo Nix make more pro NFL style throws in the first month of his NFL career than I did in 17 years that he played in college. You don't know. So, and the Senior Bowl, I went and watched him in the Senior Bowl. Okay, he's going to drop back and rip it. And he's still just kind of floating them along out there. I'm like, show me something. Well, he does when he'll rip it when he's playing now. But yeah, I'd be on board with a quarterback. When I start talking about draft priorities, I want a wide receiver, I want a cornerback, I want a defensive tackle, I want a linebacker. Yeah, that's it. Those are like my top priorities right now. Even if you bring Caden Ellis back, which is no guarantee, he's almost made his way to free agency. You have Diablo and JD Bertrand. That's not enough for me at linebacker. So I'd like to take another shot on a day 3 linebacker on that one. Philip Crawford, he already says, I'm late going back to listen. I already hit the like button. You rock, Philip. Thank you. Randy is also in here. Says, thank you, President Matt, for coming home. Yep, absolutely. Jimmy, he's for Clint Kubiak. And Second shortfall. So I wonder how Harbaugh would like reporting to Matt Ryan. Well, when you hit your mid-60s, where John Harbaugh is, pretty good chance you're going to be reporting to someone younger than you. It's just the way it is. For a long time, I was the youngest guy in the room, and now I'm the oldest guy in the room. And the people that I report to, they're all younger than I am. It's just the way it is. It's kind of like having a daughter. It scares the hell out of every dad that he's going to have a daughter at first, because we were all guys. We know what they're like, and it scares us. There's like a mental switch that flips in your brain that makes it all okay. So, does he get along with Matt Ryan? Is there anybody that really doesn't get along? I think I think having him as Matt Ryan as the face of the franchise to come out and, be a PR guy is also a big help. Let me see here. Bryce coming in says, what has Harbaugh accomplished in the last 8 years really with a top 3 QB? Bringing a young offensive mind, not a retread. I understand those, and it depends on who you can get and what you think, but what has he accomplished? It's a team game, and, the AFC has been pretty tough. So he was butting heads the last 8 years with a guy who's got how many rings now? I don't even know. How many rings does Mahomes have? 3 or 4? That doesn't make it easy. It's not easy to win those. Then you got to get through Josh Allen. You got to get through Joe Burrow. What has he accomplished? Let's see. What has he accomplished? John Harbaugh. Because I talk about this with McCarthy. What was his floor? Let's see. The last 8 years. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last 8 years was 5-11. 10-6, 8-8, 10-6, 12-4, 12-4, 9-7, 11-5. So averaging roughly 10 wins a year the last 8 years. I'd like to know what that feels like again. It's obviously the goal is Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. And I don't want to just settle, but right now, a winning season would be nice. Am I off on that? Do I think that this guy, because if you've got Harbaugh in this roster, you're probably going to have a winning season. You have a winning season, you probably make the playoffs. You do that 2-3 years in a row and it fizzles out. Okay, well, now you've at least established a culture and identity and a team where you can go make the next hire and move forward. And you've become a place for free agents where they want to go. And you've got everything in place where you can keep building. Like, I don't feel like the Ravens are going to drop off a cliff because of Harbaugh, but that's a testament to what he has helped build there. When I talk about the Ravens being the number one destination, a lot of that has to do with what he has built and what he has put in place. Man, I'd take that for the Atlanta Falcons. I certainly wouldn't turn my nose up at him, that's for sure. Matt, you might be biased on this. Matt says, I hope it's the Matt and Matt show. And that comes from Matt Kilgore. Brock Foster says, bring in Julio or Roddy White as the wide receiver coach. I'd be more apt to bring in Roddy White. But you know who I'd want is Terrence Mathis would be somebody that I might be interested in. Learned this at a very young age. And I learned it watching the NBA. Watching Magic Johnson try and become an NBA coach, he was awful. Why is he awful? It's because people with talent, they take their talent for granted. They take, I think I finally heard a story relayed years and years later. It's like, well, you just do this. And the guy looked at him and was like, I can't do that. I'm not 6'10" and Magic Johnson. I can't do that. I've run into that a little bit in some of the things I've done. I'm really good at math, at least I used to be. And I couldn't really understand why people just didn't get it. Why not? What don't you get about this? So people who are special at something like Julio was one of the most gifted wide receivers that this league has ever seen. They don't make great coaches. They just don't. Guys that have to struggle. Give me Russell Gage. I wonder what he'd be like. Guys that have to squeeze out every last drop of their physical ability in order to make it. Those make the best coaches because they know everything it takes to make that happen. I'm going to scroll down towards the bottom because my comments, I'm still like way behind down here. That comment was like 30 minutes ago. So I apologize. I can't get to everybody's comments on here. If you hit a super chat, it lights up for me, and I take care of my super chatters. Yeah, and Michael Lewitsky, one of Island Mike says, Penix said he could go under center in response to a podcast saying he couldn't. Wasn't this podcast, Michael? You know that. I find that whole narrative to be completely asinine, and I find it I think it's more excuses from the offensive coordinator. And I don't know what he was trying to excuse. Listen, we feel more comfortable because you don't talk about injuries any more than you say, oh, we wanted to protect his glass knees back there by putting him in a shotgun where he sees everything right away, and we don't trust our right tackle. He's not going to say that. That makes more sense, though, doesn't it? Than a professional athlete who runs a 4.5 40 can't go under center. That's asinine. It's ridiculous. So I have no doubt that Michael Penix can go under center. And if he's not as comfortable with it, so what? How hard can it be? They've been doing it for 150 years. Go under center and run play action out of that. So I don't have any doubt that he can go under center. So I'm not too worried about that one. Frank says he's going to have to get comfortable under center. Yeah. You know how you get more comfortable at it? Doing it. I pretty ambidextrous. Actually, I throw right-handed and I do everything else right-handed. So I was pretty ambidextrous. And I found when I was playing pickup basketball as a kid, it was easier for me to go left because nobody expected it. I actually dribble left-handed now when I play basketball because that's how I practice so much going left that it's more comfortable for me now. And I'm not a world-class athlete by any stretch of the imagination. So the whole idea of he can't go under center, that's just lazy, man. It's just lazy. How hard can it be? Some of these stiff quarterbacks that we've had in their late 30s, early 40s that have cement blocks for feet have gotten under quarterback in the 70s. So I'm not too worried about it. Talking about, let's see here. Dexter, let's hit Dexter up here. Appreciate you, Dexter. Glad you're coming in. He says, man, I'm almost convinced you'll get Robert Saleh and bring in Mike McDaniels with him. Again, when we talk about what do I look for in life, get better, okay? I look for get better. If you're struggling in school, improve. I'm not saying you have to have an A right now, but get better. It's real easy to look at the available candidates out there and say, this is going to make the Falcons better. And the Falcons were 8-9 and a half a game away from the playoffs last year. It's real easy. If I go Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniels as offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator, and bring back Jeff Ulbrich as a defensive coordinator who is familiar. Maybe he doesn't want to work with Robert Saleh again. I don't know. He was his DC once. Makes sense. I can make a real good argument why we should be excited about 2026 with Atlanta. Well, what about the quarterback position? Well, what about San Francisco's quarterback position? They did a split between Mac Jones and Brock Purdy. They lost a ton of weapons on offense to injuries, and the defense had a bunch of injuries, and they still played well. What about the quarterback position with the Houston Texans? Davis Mills, fairly unproven. Shout out to GAC right down the road. Davis Mills comes in and wins a bunch of games. He's going to get paid. He's going to make some money when his contract comes up. But they've got a system and a defense and a culture in place that they were able to survive, even thrive in that situation. So I'd be pretty happy with Robert Saleh, and if he brings in Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator. Russ Irving, one of our dear members, coming in. Thank you for being a member, Russ. He's keeping up with stuff that's live. He says, per Adam Schefter, says the Packers are now expected to try to work out a deal in coming days to keep head coach Matt LaFleur in Green Bay per sources. Okay. That should keep John Harbaugh out there. The Miami Dolphins were considered one of the favorites before the Packers start coming. And I'm okay with that. Again, if it's Harbaugh and Monken, okay, that sounds pretty exciting. That should be a reason to think. I mean, you don't think if I take everybody that doesn't want John Harbaugh, what would this team's record have been with John Harbaugh and Todd Monken as the duo in Atlanta with Jeff Ulbrich as defensive coordinator? What would this 8-9 Atlanta Falcons record have been? 11-6, 12-5. You know, with I think he's a former special teams coach. On top of that, for goodness sakes. What's not to be excited about 12-5? Well, he chokes in the playoffs. What are playoffs? I've got a 14-year-old that I don't think even remembers seeing the Falcons in the playoffs. Groovy says 10-7. I think it's better than 2 games. I think it's better than 2 games. I would have set the floor at 11-6 with the Ravens coaching staff. Let's take a look at the schedule and do a way too early win-loss projection. Not yet. Actually, it's 56 minutes. God, it flies in here, y'all. Groovy coming in says, bro, you learn to play under center plays when you're 5 years old and you keep taking snaps from the center. And it changes. You know, there's guys that'll go their entire college career without ever taking a snap under center. And all they do is say, well, he's going to have to learn how to do that once he gets to the NFL. Okay. Okay. You know, we do footwork drills. These guys all have, and they all have personal quarterback coaches coming out. And when they're playing 7-on-7s, it's all out of shotgun. There's definite a more comfortable feeling out of shotgun. They all are. That's what they're all doing. But to say that any professional quarterback can't go under center is asinine. It really is. Look at American Rat Ass coming in here. Thank you, my friend, coming in. He says, becoming a YouTube member. Thank you for being a member. It helps keep these lights on, keeps this big forehead nice and shiny, keeps us in coffee, and keeps us going. That's for sure. Keeps us going a little bit longer. Wins next year will depend on how well Penix healed. Yeah, and it'll depend on quarterback play. But if they can get competency out of the quarterback position, which frankly, they didn't really even have this year. Let me look this up here real quick. If I looked at quarterback rating for teams, I bet the Atlanta Falcons were bottom third. Let me see. I have this 2015 advanced stats. Is that the one I want? Passing. Yards per. I don't want yards per. Accuracy, pressure, play type. Still not what I'm looking for. Let's just go team stats. I'll look it up on ESPN. I was on Pro Football Reference, but I bet the Falcons at best were bottom third because, again, one of the not so secrets of the team were that Michael Penix wasn't playing that great either. He was around 20 or so in passing efficiency. Teams, why can't I find this? Why is it so hard to find passing efficiency? NFL, because I'm on the clock here and now I'm feeling pressure. I'm under pressure. Got to work. Offensive leaders, yards, passing. All right, I'm not looking at yards. I'm going to look at passer rating. I don't want the postseason. Passer rating for teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're 8 from the bottom. That means 32 minus 8 is 24 plus 1 to say what position they were in. They were in 25th. They're in 25th. So the passer rating for an 8-9 team, the Atlanta Falcons were 25th. So, and Penix was part of that in a big way. So can they do better than 25th next year? Should be able to. Competency there. And again, personnel also, they need 2 more wide receivers. Their number 2 and number 3 wide receivers were missing in action this year. They were zeros. So they went out there with Drake London, and Drake London missed 6-7 games. He missed 5, I think, officially. And then he was a shell of himself in 2 of those that he came back for. So, they're out there with wide receivers 5, 6, and 7 out there, and they were 25th. Do I have to have Penix be a top 10 quarterback to move up from 25th in passing efficiency? No, I don't. Chris Walker says OC probably makes us better. Head coach, no, he doesn't make us better. Who are we talking about there, Chris? On that one, we have a tougher schedule. We think that, but we don't really know for sure. John says, hey, Scott, thanks for being a voice of reason. Well, I'm cynical. I'll tell you that. Again, there's no such thing as being unbiased. I'll tell you flat out I am biased. But I always look for all sides of things. And, I can give you reasons to be positive and negative about all these candidates. And the overwhelming factor to me is there was coaching malpractice for the Atlanta Falcons this year in so many different ways. And they still were an 8-9 team. Yeah, they had 4 of those games where they didn't really count, and maybe they were a lot closer to being a 4-9 team. And if their schedule was worse, playing against teams that were trying to win down the stretch, maybe they would have been a 6-11 team. And Mad Scientist says the wide receivers outside and Drake and Pitts stunk. They were non-factors. Non-factors for sure. I think we are about to get out of here. So let's see here. I like Tyler Shuck. I wonder if we can get him. No, Groovy. He's going to get the chance to be the number 1, and he's just got one. He's on a rookie deal, and he's only got 1 year done. So he's under New Orleans control for a while, and they're going to move forward with him as their number 1. We don't need John Harbaugh. TV King says if he couldn't do it with Lamar, what makes people think he can win with Atlanta? It's relative on this. T King, he won a lot of games with Lamar, and the Falcons haven't. So, again, if your ultimate goal is the Super Bowl, you don't think he can take you to the Super Bowl, should you hire him? No, I guess, right? What are we on now? 1966, 2026, 60 years with no Super Bowl? Odds are none of them are going to take you to the Super Bowl. The odds are overwhelmingly against any of them doing that. It's not easy. We know this. Walk before you run kind of thing. I mean, the Falcons are such a mess from a visionary standpoint that to bring in some sort of competency and structure, to me, that's like the next step before we start talking Super Bowl. That's kind of where I am on this one. Ryan Pauly, longtime fan and listener. Well, thank you, Ryan. If it's Harbaugh, are we pursuing Malik Willis as a bridge? Closing thing to a closest thing to a Lamar offense we could replicate. There's people talking like Malik's going to get some pretty big money, and I don't want a $20 million bridge. I'd be okay with that, but I think he's going to get more of an opportunity to prove that he can be the number 1 guy. So I don't think Malik Willis, he may have played himself out of an option on that one. So we'll see. I wouldn't want to give Malik Willis a 2-year deal with $30 million guaranteed. I don't think he's proven enough of it. We've seen the NFL lose their minds, though. We absolutely have when it comes to, that guy flashed nicely. Let's give him a ton of money. Who was it? Was it Hasselbeck? Who was it up in Seattle? Castle? Was he one of those guys? That had some success in Green Bay and Kansas City, and all of a sudden gets a monster contract. Rusty's coming in again. Thanks for being a member and the super chat. He says, for everyone worried about Matt Ryan's qualifications, Google Chris Spielman and look how Detroit has been doing since he joined in 2020 and get back to me. Yeah. And Chris had a very similar, and again, he's playing a cerebral position. You think of linebackers as, big, dumb lung. No. Inside linebacker in the NFL is a doctorate level position when it comes there. Matt Flynn, Halsey. You've got to have, I want right up the middle. I want my center. I want my linebacker, and I want my safety coming from academic schools. Unless they're just freaks of nature, and then they're probably going to be playing edge anyway. Matt Ryan was a Boston College guy. I want, I think Jesse Bates, congratulations on All Pro. We didn't even talk about that. Let me hit that on that for a second before we get out of here. Jesse Bates was Wake Forest All Pro. Jesse Bates, what the hell did I call him? Jesse Bates, Wake Forest. I think he was Wake. Justin Simmons here before that. He wasn't so great here, but he was really good prior to here. Was he Boston College also? Matt Ryan, Boston College. Xavier Watts, Notre Dame. Harrison Phillips? I'm gonna screw up these names. Was he a Stanford guy? Up in Minnesota for a long time. Talking about this looks pretty groovy. Has the numbers here. It's pretty comparable here. Michael Penix was 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 88.5 passer rating. Kirk was 84.8 on 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And that was Kirk's lowest or second lowest passer rating of his career when he started at least 6 games. So, I'm not all that interested in Kirk Cousins coming back either. People look at the record. They think win is totally a quarterback stat. They won because it was a Atlanta Falcons record-breaking defense and an Atlanta Falcons record-breaking offensive player in Bijan Robinson. And they were playing against teams that didn't necessarily care as much about winning. Anthony, let me see here. I think this is it. Scott, would you be okay with Matt bringing that whole Green Bay with Matt LaFleur bringing the whole Green Bay offense? I don't know enough about what else they have. How good is Jordan Love? I don't. He's good. How much of that is system based? I think I didn't watch all the games this weekend, but I think maybe the best single throw I saw out of all of them, and I'm not saying it was the best throw of the weekend. Again, I didn't watch all of them. Was Trevor Lawrence's go-ahead touchdown pass for Jacksonville, and he was a number 1 overall, and he made that throw, and I let out an expletive. Holy wow! That's why he was a number 1 overall. Is Jordan Love that type, or is he more of a system guy? If you got the right system, that's fine. If you got a guy that can run your system, but how much is Matt LaFleur? Matt LaFleur comes down. Matt LaFleur has worked with Mike McDaniel. They were together. Matt LaFleur has worked with Jeff Ulbrich together. Schefter has said Matt LaFleur is not going anywhere. But if Matt LaFleur were to come to Atlanta and have Mike McDaniel as his offensive coordinator and Jeff Ulbrich as his defensive coordinator, I'd say sign me up on that one. Why do people want to run PR for Penix? He's under contract and he should playing time in 26. Past stats aren't very relevant anymore. It's how confident do you feel in Penix moving forward? We'll find out, because you're right. He's going to get 26. And stats are, y'all have heard me say this before, quarterback play is a collective. Offensive coordinator, pass catchers, protection, quarterback. Those are 4 of many factors that go into good quarterback play. How many of those were a negative? Offensive line, Eli Wilkinson was fair, but he was the 3rd-team right tackle. Protection. Weapons, mixed bag. Made it hard to push the ball downfield, that's for sure. When you had 3 good weapons, you had 3 really good weapons. Drake London is elite. Bijan Robinson is elite. Kyle Pitts was very good this year. Those guys aren't really pushing the ball downfield as much anymore. Wide receivers 2 and 3 were nothing. Offensive coordinator, I think we'll all pretty much say that was a negative. And then on Penix, well, with all the other factors, we're not sure. Wilkinson played okay, but golly, he jumped off sides. He had a lot of false starts, didn't he? Matt Snyder says he was the most penalized right tackle. I believe that. Mike says he's going to have a seance, and I'm going to get Lehman Bennett as head coach. I remember those days. Lehman Bennett wasn't all that bad. Marion Campbell was. Then they had some guy. Who did they have in between there that was such a joke? Or am I just getting my joke of Atlanta franchises mixed together and thinking of Chuck Tanner? Do y'all remember that with the Atlanta Falcons when Chuck Tanner came here? What a joke that was. Lehman Bennett led to Lehman Bennett went to Dan Henning, Campbell to Glanville. So no, I wasn't mixing anybody in there. Dan Henning wasn't very good. Dan Henning went 7-9, 4-12, 4-12, and 7-8. They fired that guy for Marion Campbell. Marion Campbell went 3-12, 5-11, and then 3-13. And then Glanville came in and went 5-11, and then took the team to the playoffs for the first time in 12 years. He's kind of a sideshow. I think that's about it. Yeah, and remember, we can't talk about stats. Stats are for losers. Who said that? I don't remember him being there anymore. On that note, y'all, Brandon has a good reminder. There's 280 watching on YouTube. We only have 60 likes. Hit that like button. Help us out. It helps circulate through the algorithmic fear of YouTube and Google and gets us exposed to more Falcons fans just like you. And on that note, I am going to get out of here unless there's any breaking news. And frankly, I could expect a general manager to be happening anytime this week. Once they did their Matt Ryan announcement, it happened. I think once they take care of their obligations of who they have to interview for general manager, I think that'll be announced. That could happen any minute. And then we'll move on to head coach. Depending on who it is, that could be right away. It could be quickly. It's not going to happen as quickly. End of the week, beginning of next week. If it's somebody like Harbaugh, who's going to interview with everybody that he wants to interview with, then I think the Falcons will make that list. But if it ends up being somebody like Clint Kubiak, we might not hear that officially until February, after the Super Bowl, if Seattle makes it that far. Larry Lee, yes. Marion Campbell was hired twice as head coach. The Smiths were not a serious group of owners. They were not a serious franchise. The 80s were a clown show. The NFL wasn't nearly as big. What a disaster. What a disaster. And that's one of the reasons why college football is king. Yes, the NFL didn't show up here until the 60s, but if they had come down here and won 5 Super Bowls, the Atlanta Falcons would be the biggest team in the NFL. They would have owned the entire Southeast. The next closest team was Tampa and Cincinnati and New Orleans. Those were the next closest teams during that era. And the Falcons could have owned the entire area of Dixie, owned it. Instead, they were a laughingstock. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. Keep your notifications on. If they go general manager, we will go live. We'll have a gut reaction. And otherwise, Garrett will be back more than likely tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then Nick and I will be here Wednesday. We'll run through some of the news. And congratulations, since I put it in the description, Bijan Robinson was so good, he was named All-Pro twice. Not sure how that happens. He was named first-team All-Pro running back, and they only named one, so good for him. And then he was named second-team All-Purpose. Isn't that kind of like naming a guy MVP and Offensive Player of the Year? I figured the first-team All-Pro would kind of take that, so it was a little odd to me. Chris Lindstrom, I believe, was second-team All-Pro. Kyle Pitts was second-team All-Pro. Good for him. So he was the number 2 guy because they weren't running 12 personnel out there. He was the number 2 guy All-Pro. And then Jesse Bates was second-team All-Pro as well. So the Falcons, despite their season, were well recognized, and some established guys have kind of earned that. Lindstrom and Bates have kind of learned that, oh, yeah, that's who I vote for, those guys, because they had kind of quiet years. And then Pitts had a really good year stats-wise to earn second-team All-Pro. And then Bijan ran off with the yards from scrimmage and had just some amazing plays this year. He was a joy to watch. Congratulations to them. I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate y'all being here. Stay warm out there, everybody. It got into the 20s after we had 70s last week. And we will see y'all next time.